Have you noticed that right before a major transformation, your emotions don't stabilize? They amplify. One moment you feel unstoppable, as if destiny itself is pulling you forward, and the next you're immersed in doubt, anxiety, or even despair. This emotional fluctuation confuses most people, and many interpret it as evidence they're doing something wrong. But here's the revelation that changes everything. The intensification of emotions isn't a sign of failure. It's confirmation that a quantum shift is actively unfolding. This emotional amplification follows a precise pattern. Instead of your feelings becoming more consistent as you approach transformation, they often become more volatile, swinging between profound clarity and deep confusion, between absolute certainty and crippling doubt. It's as if your emotional thermostat suddenly loses its regulation. Most people interpret this as regression or failure, not realizing they're experiencing one of the most reliable indicators of imminent breakthrough. There exists a pivotal moment in every quantum journey that rarely gets discussed. It arrives unexpectedly, often when you're experiencing your deepest connection, your most perfect alignment, and then nothing. The universe goes quiet. Those meaningful coincidences that seem to guide your path suddenly vanish. The repeating number sequences no longer appear on digital displays. The meaningful encounters that reflected your innermost desires fade away. Even your dreamscape becomes silent. This moment triggers panic in most seekers. They assume something has gone wrong. They believe they've lost their connection to the field or fallen out of alignment. But what if this silence isn't disconnection at all? What if it's actually the clearest signal that your transformation is closer than ever before? This silence, this pause in the cosmic conversation, is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of the entire manifestation process. We've been conditioned to believe that ongoing evidence, constant signs, and persistent confirmation are the measures of our alignment. Yet the deeper mechanics of reality tell a different story. The universe operates through patterns of expansion and contraction, through cycles of communication and silence, through rhythms of evidence and faith. Understanding this rhythm is what separates those who manifest consistently from those who struggle with constant doubt. Consider a musical symphony. Before the most powerful crescendo, there's always that moment of pause. The musicians hold perfectly still. The air grows thick with anticipation, and in that stillness, everyone in the audience leans forward. The silence isn't empty. It's pregnant with potential. In quantum manifestation, this same principle applies. The universe doesn't withdraw because you've lost connection. It pulls back because the entire field is reorganizing itself around your new reality. You're experiencing the pause between movements. When you recognize this pattern, you'll stop fighting against the silence and begin using it as your most powerful gateway. Think about the space between breaths. That moment when your lungs are neither inhaling nor exhaling. That pause isn't the absence of breathing. It's an essential part of the respiratory cycle. Similarly, the pause in synchronicities isn't the absence of manifestation. It's an integral phase of the manifestation process itself. Most people miss this entirely. They breathe in signs and confirmations, but panic during the natural exhale, not realizing that both are necessary for the complete cycle of creation. In quantum physics, this phenomenon has a parallel. When a particle prepares to shift into a new state, it doesn't move in a straight line from one position to another. Instead, it enters superposition, that mysterious liminal state where it exists potentially everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. This is the quantum enigma. Uncertainty isn't chaos. It's infinite possibility condensed into a single moment. When your synchronicities pause, you've entered this exact space. Your previous timeline hasn't completely dissolved, and your new one hasn't fully materialized. You're suspended between realities, and in this space, the universe isn't asking you to panic. It's inviting you to trust. The quantum field operates through what physicists call collapse functions, moments when probability waves transform into definite particles, when potential becomes actual. But what's less discussed is the phase immediately before collapse. That mysterious space where reality hasn't yet decided what it will become. Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, called this complementarity. The recognition that something can exist in seemingly contradictory states simultaneously. Your manifestation journey follows this exact pattern. Before your new reality fully emerges, you enter a space of complementarity where the old and new coexist in potential. The silence of synchronicities is your experiential proof that you're in this quantum borderland. But trusting during silence challenges us deeply, doesn't it? The human mind constantly seeks evidence. We've been conditioned to look for external validation that we're moving in the right direction. When those confirmations disappear, our instinctive response is to assume failure, that we've lost our connection, or worse, that nothing is happening at all. Yet quantum science reveals the opposite truth. The moment when external evidence vanishes is precisely when the most profound shifts are occurring beneath the surface of perception. If you're finding value in these insights about the quantum nature of reality, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to join our frequency. This small action actually helps align your consciousness with this field of understanding. This pattern appears everywhere in nature. The seed must be buried in darkness before it can sprout. The caterpillar enters the formless soup of the chrysalis before emerging as a butterfly. Winter's barrenness precedes spring's abundance. The universe speaks through patterns, and one of its most consistent messages is that transformation requires a phase of apparent nothingness. Your manifestation journey follows this universal blueprint. The silence isn't the absence of the process. It's confirmation that you're precisely where you need to be in the cycle of creation. Physicist David Bohm, who developed the concept of implicate order, explained that our visible reality is merely the unfolding of a deeper hidden dimension. What appears as silence is actually the implicate order rearranging itself to birth the next manifestation in your experience. Bohm's theory goes even deeper. He proposed that what we experience as reality is just the explicate order, the visible, tangible world of form. But beneath this lies the implicate order, where everything exists in a state of undivided wholeness. When synchronicities stop, you're not disconnected from the process. You're actually moving deeper into the implicate order, where the real work of manifestation happens. The implicate contains all possibilities simultaneously, and when it rearranges itself, the explicate eventually follows. The silence is your cue that you've moved from surface manifestation to core creation, from the waves on the ocean to the currents that create them. Spiritual traditions have always understood this principle. The desert fathers and mothers spoke of the dark night of the soul not as punishment, but as initiation into higher consciousness. Neville Goddard taught that persistence through the silence is what births the miracle, because imagination works invisibly beneath appearances. Even contemporary teachers like Joe Dispenza explain that the absence of external confirmation is precisely where your nervous system learns to maintain coherence without dependency. You haven't lost connection to the field. The field is teaching you to stand firmly within it without requiring constant proof. Throughout history, every wisdom tradition has acknowledged this pattern. In Taoism, it's expressed through the principle of Wu Wei, effortless action that arises from alignment with the natural flow. The pause in Synchronicities is the universe inviting you into Wu Wei, a state where you're no longer forcing, chasing, or manipulating reality, but simply being the frequency that naturally attracts your desire. In Hinduism, the concept of pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses, isn't about disconnection, but about developing inner perception. When external signs withdraw, your internal awareness develops. In Buddhist practice, the principle of non-attachment teaches that true manifestation comes not from grasping at evidence, but from releasing the need for it altogether. Imagine standing outside before dawn. If you judged reality solely by the darkness of the sky, you might believe sunshine would never return. But the darkness of night isn't the absence of the sun, it's the guarantee of its return. Similarly, the silence before a quantum leap isn't the absence of manifestation, it's the guarantee that transformation is underway. Your higher consciousness is drawing you into stillness so you can release your addiction to external validation and anchor more deeply into your own resonance. I'm curious about your experience with this phenomenon. Have you noticed periods where synchronicities suddenly stopped in your life? What happened when you stayed the course instead of giving up? Share your story in the comments below. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Consider what happens just before daybreak. That moment astronomers call astronomical twilight, when the sun is still below the horizon, but its light begins to scatter in the upper atmosphere. To the untrained eye, it still appears as darkness, but subtle changes are already underway. The stars begin to fade, the eastern sky imperceptibly lightens, and nature starts to stir. Your manifestation process follows this same pattern. The silence isn't truly empty. It's filled with subtle shifts that your conscious mind may not yet register. But at a deeper level, the field is already responding, already shifting, already rearranging itself around your new frequency. Just as you wouldn't abandon your watch for the sunrise minutes before it appears, don't abandon your faith in manifestation when the synchronicities pause. Dawn is closest when darkness seems most complete. So if you're experiencing this now, if you've noticed fewer meaningful coincidences, if the signs have quieted, if the universe feels unusually still, don't assume you've lost your way. The opposite is true. You've entered the chamber where transformation is forged. You're in the pause that precedes the leap. And just like the space between heartbeats, this pause isn't a mistake or a failure. It's essential for life itself. This silence is actually one of the most sacred spaces in your entire manifestation journey. It's the point where you're being invited to make a profound shift, from seeking to knowing, from external validation to internal certainty, from needing evidence to being the evidence. The masters of manifestation throughout history have all discovered this truth. The real power isn't in receiving signs, but in becoming so aligned that you no longer need them. The silence is your invitation to this mastery. Instead of asking, "Where are my signs?" ask yourself, "Who am I becoming in this silence?" The answer to that question is the key to your quantum leap. Stay with me, because next, I'll reveal why this silence isn't random, why synchronicities naturally cease right before a major shift, and how this exact space is where your quantum leap truly begins. Before we go deeper, take a moment to reflect on your own journey. Have you experienced this pattern? That moment when everything seemed to be flowing, signs appearing everywhere, and then suddenly, silence. Most people interpret this as losing their connection. But what if you've been misreading the signal all along? What if the universe hasn't abandoned you, but is actually drawing you into a more intimate relationship with creation itself? This perspective changes everything. If synchronicities represent the universe's whispered guidance, why would they suddenly stop before something significant manifests? To fully grasp this, we need to examine both quantum mechanics and the neuroscience of perception. In quantum physics, the observer effect demonstrates that the very act of conscious observation collapses a wave of potential into a particle of experience. Synchronicities are glimpses of that collapse happening, moments when the field visibly responds to your awareness. This observer effect goes even deeper than most realize. Physicist John Wheeler proposed what he called the participatory universe. The idea that consciousness doesn't just passively observe reality, but actively participates in creating it. The implications are profound. When you first begin consciously manifesting, the field responds with synchronicities as a form of feedback, confirmation that you're engaged in the creative process. But as your consciousness evolves, you move from being an occasional participant to becoming a consistent creator. The synchronicities don't disappear because the connection is broken. They subside because you're graduating from participant to creator, from student to master, from receiver of reality to generator of it. But here's the paradox that changes everything. If the universe provided you with constant synchronicities, your nervous system would never detach from needing external confirmation. You would become dependent on signs rather than developing true alignment. That's precisely why, before a major quantum shift, the synchronicities cease. The field isn't abandoning you. It's training you to embody your new state without requiring external validation. This is similar to how great teachers operate. Initially, they provide constant feedback and guidance. But as the student develops mastery, the teacher gradually withdraws that feedback, creating space for self-reliance to emerge. This doesn't mean the teacher has abandoned the student. Quite the opposite. It means the teacher trusts the student's developing abilities. When synchronicities pause, it's the universe's vote of confidence in your developing mastery. It's not withholding confirmation because you're failing. It's creating space for your own inner knowing to emerge as the primary guidance system. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. Initially, someone stabilizes you by holding the seat, giving you balance and reassurance. Those early synchronicities function like that supporting hand, stabilizing, guiding, encouraging. But eventually, that hand must release its grip. The silence is that moment of release. You might wobble, you might feel uncertain, but it's precisely in this release that you prove you can maintain your own frequency. Without this phase, you would never master alignment. You would only master dependency. Consider what happens in that moment when the supporting hand lets go. Physiologically, your body must instantly activate new neuromuscular patterns. Your proprioceptive system, the sense that tells your brain where your body is in space, must recalibrate. Your vestibular system must find a new equilibrium. This momentary recalibration feels like instability, but it's actually the emergence of a new level of capability. The same thing happens in consciousness when synchronicities stop. Your awareness must activate new patterns of perception. Your intuition must step forward as primary guidance. Your faith must find a deeper foundation. What feels like instability is actually evolution. Neuroscience confirms this understanding. Your brain operates through predictive coding, constantly creating models of reality based on past experiences. Synchronicities disrupt these models. They're anomalies, signals that your consciousness is bending probability. But when a new timeline is about to stabilize, your brain requires time to recalibrate. During that pause, your subconscious is integrating a completely new prediction model. To your conscious awareness, it feels like silence. To your brain, it's profound reconfiguration. The neuroscience goes even deeper. When you experience consistent synchronicities, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and pleasure. This creates a positive feedback loop where you begin to crave the dopamine hit of each new sign. But true manifestation isn't about the neurochemical rewards of seeing signs. It's about becoming the frequency that naturally attracts your desire. The pause in synchronicities helps break the dopamine dependency, allowing a deeper motivation to emerge. Instead of creating from a place of chemical reward seeking, you begin creating from essence, from being rather than wanting. This transition is essential for mastery. This explains why many people experience anxiety or restlessness when synchronicities stop. They misinterpret integration as absence. Spiritually, every wisdom tradition acknowledges this truth. Yogic philosophy speaks of pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses not as loss, but as preparation for deeper union. Christian mystics described the silence before revelation as the cloud of unknowing. Neville Goddard explained that you must persist in your assumption without visible evidence, because the apparent lack of confirmation isn't the death of your desire, it's the gestation of it. Even modern researchers like Joe Dispenza remind us that coherence is tested when external reality goes quiet, because that's when your internal world demonstrates it can sustain the frequency independently. Look at how this principle appears across different wisdom traditions. In Kabbalah, there's the concept of Tzimtzum, the divine contraction that creates space for creation to emerge. Before God could create the universe, he first had to withdraw, creating an apparent void. This same pattern appears in your manifestation journey. The withdrawal of synchronicities creates the space where your own creative power can fully emerge. In Islamic Sufism, there's the state called fana, the dissolution of the ego before Baqwa, the emergence of divine consciousness. The pause in synchronicities facilitates your own fana, the dissolution of dependency before the emergence of creator consciousness. So why do synchronicities stop? Because the quantum field is ensuring you can embody your new reality without external scaffolding. Imagine if every time you experience doubt, the universe had to flash another number sequence or send another chance message from a stranger. You would never graduate into true mastery. The silence is your graduation ceremony. It's the universe stepping back and saying, "You already know how to hold this frequency. Now prove it to yourself." This graduation has profound implications for your creative power. Think about how a child learns to walk. Initially, they need constant support, hands to hold, furniture to grab, constant encouragement. But eventually, they must take those first unsupported steps. In that moment, they discover something revolutionary. They can move through space under their own power. When synchronicities pause, you're being invited into a similar discovery, that you can move through reality under your own creative power. You're not just a receiver of manifestation, but a generator of it. This transition from dependent creator to sovereign creator is what the silence facilitates. If you're finding yourself drawn to this deeper understanding of quantum creation, I want to share something with you. While we've explored the silence between synchronicities today, this is just one facet of a much larger framework for consciousness mastery. In my book, Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness Mastery, I take you through the complete system of quantum manifestation, from understanding the observer effect and field consciousness, to mastering heart-brain coherence and living as the field itself rather than separate from it. This guide explores all 9 master frequencies that govern reality creation and provides step-by-step practices to move from unconscious manifestation to conscious embodiment. If you're ready to transform your relationship with the quantum field entirely, you'll find this resource in the pinned comment below. There's also a more profound principle at work. In physics, when a system achieves coherence, external fluctuations naturally diminish. This means the closer you are to your desired timeline, the less noise you perceive. Silence isn't the field turning away. It's the signature of increasing coherence, like a tuning fork that vibrates cleanly once it finds perfect resonance. Your experience appears quieter not because nothing is happening, but because alignment is smoothing the interference patterns. Quantum physicist Erwin Schrödinger described a phenomenon called quantum coherence, the state where quantum particles begin to behave as a single wave function rather than individual entities. When this happens, the system becomes more ordered, more unified, more stable. Your consciousness operates by these same principles. As you approach full alignment with your desire, your energy field becomes more coherent. The noise of conflicting vibrations diminishes. The static between stations fades. What registers as silence is actually the emergence of pure signal, the clean, clear frequency of your chosen reality without distortion. The trap most people fall into is misinterpretation. When signs stop, many spiral into doubt. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the universe has forgotten me. That very doubt pulls them back into incoherence, recreating the need for more signs, restarting the entire cycle. But when you understand silence for what it truly is, the signal of proximity, you step out of that loop. You stop pleading with the universe for breadcrumbs and instead become the bread itself. You embody the alignment even when nothing external validates it. And in that state, the quantum leap becomes inevitable. This misinterpretation is like someone standing at the threshold of a dark tunnel. When they first entered, there were lights along the path, guiding each step. But as they approach the exit, there's a stretch of complete darkness before the opening appears. Most people, upon reaching this darkness, turn back, assuming they've lost the path. They return to the familiar lights, never realizing they were steps away from breakthrough. When you understand the mechanics of manifestation, you recognize that the darkness isn't deviation. It's confirmation you're approaching the exit. Instead of turning back, you move forward with even greater certainty, knowing the light of your new reality is just ahead. So the next time your synchronicities disappear, don't panic, smile. Recognize this threshold for what it truly is, the pause between timelines, the hand releasing the bicycle seat. This isn't the universe abandoning you, it's the universe trusting you. And that trust is the clearest indication that you're closer than ever to your quantum shift. When you understand this pattern, you develop a completely different relationship with the manifestation process. Instead of fearing the silence, you welcome it. Instead of interpreting it as loss, you recognize it as evolution. The masters of manifestation throughout history share this common trait. They don't require constant external validation because they've internalized the frequency of their desires so completely that external confirmation becomes secondary. The silence is your invitation to join their ranks, to move from seeking evidence to being evidence. Stay with me, because next, we'll explore the science behind why your emotions often intensify during this silence, and why that emotional turbulence is actually the most reliable sign that your breakthrough is imminent. Before we move into the next phase, take a moment to reflect on how this understanding might transform your current manifestation journey. If you've been experiencing a pause in synchronicities, how would your relationship with that silence change if you viewed it not as disconnection, but as graduation? What if the very absence you've been interpreting as failure is actually the strongest confirmation of your success? This shift in perception changes everything about how you navigate the quantum field. Have you noticed that right before a major transformation, your emotions don't stabilize? They amplify? One moment you feel unstoppable, as if destiny itself is pulling you forward, and the next you're immersed in doubt, anxiety, or even despair. This emotional fluctuation confuses most people, and many interpret it as evidence they're doing something wrong. But here's the revelation that changes everything. The intensification of emotions isn't a sign of failure. It's confirmation that a quantum shift is actively unfolding. To understand this phenomenon, we must look deeper into quantum mechanics. In the quantum realm, particles don't exist in one definite location until observed. They exist in superposition, a state of multiple simultaneous possibilities, until they collapse into a single reality. There is turbulence, a field of potential flickering between outcomes. That's precisely what's happening within your consciousness. The quantum field doesn't operate in gradual, linear progressions. It functions through what physicists call quantum jumps, sudden, discontinuous leaps from one energy state to another without passing through intermediate stages. When electrons shift to higher orbital states, they don't travel the distance. They disappear from one position and reappear in another. Your consciousness follows this same principle. As you approach a quantum shift, you don't experience a smooth transition. Instead, you oscillate rapidly between states, creating the emotional equivalent of quantum uncertainty. Moments of being energetically everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. When you stand at the edge of a quantum jump, your awareness is hovering between two timelines. The old reality you're leaving behind and the new one you're stepping into. The emotional fluctuations you experience are the human equivalent of quantum superposition. You are literally oscillating between worlds. This superposition state is what physicist Erwin Schrödinger attempted to illustrate with his famous cat paradox. The idea that under quantum rules, a system could exist in multiple contradictory states simultaneously until observation collapses it into a single state. Your consciousness operates by these same principles. Before your new reality fully materializes, you exist in a state of emotional superposition, simultaneously holding the vibration of your old identity and your new becoming. This creates what feels like emotional chaos, but it's actually a perfectly orchestrated quantum process, the necessary turbulence before new order emerges. Neuroscience adds another dimension to this understanding. Your brain functions through predictive coding, constantly generating models of reality based on your previous experiences. When you prepare to enter a new reality, this predictive model resists the change. Your subconscious sends emotional alerts, attempting to keep you safely within the familiar. That surge of doubt, fear, or sudden sadness isn't evidence you're misaligned. It's your brain trying to recycle the old version of you. From a neurological perspective, what you're experiencing is a clash between different neural networks. Your default mode network, the brain circuitry responsible for your sense of self and habitual thinking, is fighting to maintain its dominance. Meanwhile, new neural patterns associated with your emerging identity are strengthening. This creates a period of neurological competition, which registers emotionally as instability. Research in neuroplasticity shows that before new neural pathways fully establish themselves, there's often increased activity in both the old and new networks simultaneously. Your emotional turbulence is the subjective experience of this neurological restructuring. Simultaneously, your higher consciousness is pulling you forward, triggering waves of inspiration, joy, or anticipation. The collision between these two forces, the old brain model and the new energetic alignment, creates the emotional turbulence you're experiencing. This collision isn't chaotic, it's purposeful. Your higher consciousness isn't fighting against your brain's resistance, it's using it. Just as a butterfly needs the resistance of the chrysalis to develop strong wings, your emerging self needs the resistance of your old patterns to develop strength and coherence. Without this opposition, your new identity would lack the structural integrity to sustain itself. The emotional turbulence isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature, deliberately designed to forge resilience in your new frequency. Spiritual traditions have described this phenomenon for millennia. Buddhist teachings refer to it as the burning ground, the space where ego resists dissolution right before awakening. St. John of the Cross described the dark night of the soul not as punishment, but as preparation for divine union. Contemporary teachers like Joe Dispenza speak about the necessity of breaking through the body's addiction to familiar emotional states. When you're accustomed to survival emotions like worry or stress, stepping into coherence initially feels uncomfortable. And Neville Goddard emphasized that persistence in assumption means maintaining the feeling of your desire fulfilled even when emotions fluctuate wildly. All these teachings converge on a single truth. The internal storm isn't the end, it's the passageway. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes Bardo states, transitional phases between death and rebirth, where consciousness encounters both terrifying and blissful visions. These aren't random hallucinations, but projections of consciousness as it releases old identities before forming new ones. Your manifestation journey creates a similar Bardo state, a space between identities where you experience both the death throes of your old self and the birth pangs of your new becoming. The emotional volatility isn't chaos. It's a perfectly orchestrated rite of passage that every soul must navigate during profound transformation. From an energetic perspective, emotions are literally energy in motion. When you're approaching a quantum jump, your energy field accelerates to match the higher frequency of your chosen reality. This vibrational acceleration stirs up everything that doesn't resonate with the new frequency. Old doubts surface, past traumas echo, latent fears intensify. Not because you're failing, but because these lower frequencies cannot cross into the new timeline. They rise so they can be released. This energetic purification follows principles similar to phase transitions in physics. When water approaches its boiling point, the molecular activity intensifies dramatically. The water becomes turbulent before transforming into steam. Your consciousness undergoes a similar phase transition as you approach a quantum shift. What feels like emotional chaos is actually your energy field approaching its transformation point, the threshold where one state of being converts into another. The intensification isn't disorder. It's the necessary energetic acceleration that precedes transformation. Imagine a spacecraft preparing to break free from Earth's gravitational field. Right before achieving escape velocity, it encounters maximum resistance. But that resistance isn't evidence of failure. It's proof that liftoff is imminent. This metaphor extends beyond the obvious parallel. In physics, the principle of escape velocity shows that a rocket must reach a specific threshold of acceleration to break free from gravitational pull. But right at that threshold, the gravitational resistance also peaks. The moment of greatest opposition is simultaneously the moment of imminent breakthrough. Your consciousness follows this exact pattern. When emotional resistance intensifies, it's not indicating failure. It's confirming that you're approaching escape velocity from your old reality. The amplified doubt, fear, or confusion aren't signs you're doing something wrong. They're confirmation that you're doing something so right that your old patterns are fighting with everything they have to maintain their grip. Here's the secret that transforms everything. The key isn't to resist the emotional turbulence. but to ride it consciously. When you push against doubt, you actually strengthen it. When you collapse into fear, you recycle it. But when you observe these emotions as part of the quantum recalibration process, they lose their grip on your consciousness. You stop identifying with them and instead become the witnessing awareness. This witnessing stance is what Eastern traditions call the observer self, the aspect of consciousness that can watch experiences without becoming entangled in them. From quantum mechanics, we know that observation fundamentally changes the behavior of particles. Similarly, when you shift from being your emotions to observing your emotions, you fundamentally change their impact on your manifestation process. The feelings don't disappear, but their power to derail you does. This is why many spiritual traditions emphasize meditation and mindfulness. These practices strengthen your capacity to witness rather than identify with emotional states, allowing you to maintain coherence even during turbulence. This is precisely why mindfulness practices, breathwork, and nervous system regulation are essential tools in the manifestation process. They anchor you when your internal weather becomes stormy, allowing you to maintain the higher frequency without being pulled back down. These practices work because they activate your vagus nerve, the primary pathway of your parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest and digest functions, rather than fight or flight responses. When emotionally triggered, your sympathetic nervous system floods your body with stress hormones, narrowing your perception and reinforcing old patterns. By consciously engaging in slow breathing, meditation, or other regulation techniques, you activate vagal tone, which counteracts this stress response. This physiological shift allows you to experience intense emotions without being hijacked by them. You remain capable of holding your desired frequency even when waves of doubt or fear arise. This capacity is what distinguishes master manifestors from beginners. Not the absence of emotional turbulence, but the ability to maintain coherence despite it. Let's make this practical. The next time doubt arises, instead of thinking, "I'm failing," reframe it. "This is evidence my old self is dissolving." When fear surfaces, remind yourself, "This is turbulence because my reality is approaching escape velocity." When joy and inspiration return, savor them as previews of your chosen timeline. By shifting your perspective, you transform the emotional roller coaster from a contradiction into confirmation. This reframing isn't just positive thinking, it's neurologically sound. Your brain processes experience through the frameworks you provide. When you interpret emotional turbulence as failure, your brain reinforces neural pathways associated with giving up. When you interpret the same turbulence as confirmation of impending breakthrough, your brain strengthens neural pathways associated with persistence and transformation. The emotions themselves don't change, but their impact on your manifestation journey completely transforms. This is why perspective is as powerful as the practice itself. It literally rewires how your brain processes the experience of transformation. These emotional fluctuations aren't random. They're the echoes of your quantum leap in progress. And most importantly, the intensity is temporary. Just as every storm eventually passes, these heightened emotions will settle once your new timeline stabilizes. The calm that follows will feel like profound peace, not because nothing is happening, but because coherence has been achieved. That's when manifestation becomes effortless. This temporary nature is critical to understand. Many people abandon the process during peak emotional turbulence, assuming the discomfort will be permanent. But quantum physics teaches us that systems naturally seek equilibrium. The heightened energy required for phase transition isn't meant to be sustained indefinitely. It serves its purpose in facilitating transformation, and then naturally settles. The emotional intensity you're experiencing isn't your new normal. It's the temporary acceleration required to shift timelines. Once the shift occurs, your nervous system recalibrates to a new baseline that feels more peaceful and stable than your previous state ever did. So if your emotions have been intensifying lately, don't resist them. Celebrate this turbulence. Recognize it as the vibrational recalibration that confirms your new reality is within reach. Instead of fearing the waves, learn to navigate them skillfully. Because on the other side of this emotional flux lies the collapse into the timeline you've been calling forth. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." Your emotional turbulence is the current carrying you from one version of yourself to another. When you resist the current, you create suffering. When you surrender to its flow while maintaining your direction, you discover that the very intensity you feared was actually the force propelling you toward transformation. The emotions aren't obstacles. They're the energy of your becoming, the power source of your quantum leap. I encourage you to re-watch this video daily for the next 7 days, especially during those moments when synchronicities seem to have disappeared from your experience. Each viewing will deepen your understanding and rewire your response to silence. When you share this message with others navigating their own quantum shifts, you create a ripple effect in the collective field. This sharing doesn't just help them, it reinforces these principles in your own consciousness, accelerating your manifestation by expanding the field of awareness that supports this understanding. Stay with me, because next, we'll explore something widely misunderstood, what many call the final test. It isn't the universe testing your worthiness. It's your subconscious offering one last reflection of old patterns. And once you move through it, your quantum leap becomes unavoidable. As we prepare to explore this next phase, I invite you to reflect on your own emotional journey. Have you noticed this pattern of intensification in your manifestation process? Have you interpreted emotional turbulence as evidence of failure rather than confirmation of proximity? Take a moment and comment below with this phrase: "I embrace the turbulence as confirmation of my quantum shift." This isn't just engagement. It's a conscious declaration to the field, a signal that you're ready to reframe emotional intensity as evidence of your transformation rather than opposition to it. Most seekers believe that when challenges suddenly intensify right before a breakthrough, the universe must be testing their commitment. They imagine some cosmic examiner evaluating their worthiness. But here's the deeper truth. The universe doesn't test you. It mirrors you. What feels like a final examination is actually your own subconscious mind playing out the final echoes of your old identity. It's not external judgment, it's internal patterning. This understanding reveals why the very challenges you might dread could be the clearest indicators that your quantum shift is imminent. Let's examine this through neuroscience. Your subconscious functions like a predictive coding mechanism. Research shows that approximately 95% of your daily behaviors and emotional responses are automatic, operating on patterns imprinted through past experiences. When you stand at the threshold of stepping into a new reality, those patterns activate one final time. Why? Because your brain is attempting to maintain the familiar, generating scenarios, conflicts, fears, and doubts. Not because they represent actual threats, but because your nervous system has been wired to equate familiarity with safety. This is why cellular biologist Dr. Bruce Lipton emphasizes that subconscious programming outweighs conscious intentions unless you interrupt the cycle. From a quantum perspective, this final challenge is simply the collapse of outdated wave patterns. When a new timeline is about to crystallize, The remnants of the old frequency rise to the surface of awareness. It resembles resonance in physics. When two frequencies interact, the weaker eventually dissolves, but before fading, it amplifies itself. That amplification is what you experience as the final challenge. Spiritual traditions across cultures have acknowledged this threshold moment. Sufis call it the barzakh, the place where ego resists surrender most intensely. Neville Goddard described it as persistence. The universe will reflect your old assumptions until you persist in holding the new one. Joe Dispenza teaches that the body accustomed to familiar emotional states will generate scenarios to draw you back into stress, anger, or scarcity because that's what it recognizes. Across all traditions, the message remains consistent. The apparent test isn't an obstacle, it's a mirror. Here's how it manifests in daily life. You've been meditating, elevating your frequency, visualizing abundance. You feel aligned. Suddenly, an unexpected expense appears, or a conflict erupts, or an opportunity dissolves. Most people panic, assuming manifestation has failed. But this is precisely when the quantum field is asking, not with words, but with resonance. Will you respond from your old self or from your new consciousness? If you react with fear and frustration, you reinforce the old identity. If you remain centered, coherent, and faithful to the frequency of your chosen reality, you demonstrate that you've already shifted. In that demonstration, the old pattern dissolves completely. Think of it like a video game. Before advancing to the next level, you often encounter a final challenge. But that challenge isn't new. It's a concentrated version of everything you've already overcome. The universe isn't blocking your progress. It's showing you the old energies you're ready to release in concentrated form. When you maintain alignment, the challenge dissolves and you advance. There's a beautiful metaphor in alchemy. Before gold emerges, impurities must rise to the surface of the molten metal. They bubble, resist, and create turbulence. But once they burn away, what remains is pure. Your final challenge represents those rising impurities. When you recognize it for what it truly is, you stop fearing the flames and start trusting the purification process. The practical key here is awareness. When challenges arise, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What version of myself is this inviting me to embody?" That simple reframing transforms the experience from punishment to initiation. Your old patterns are surfacing to give you one final opportunity to choose differently. And every time you choose differently, you anchor more deeply into your quantum shift. Let me make this absolutely clear. The challenge you're facing right now may not be a setback. It may be the sign that you're only moments away from collapsing into your new reality. The frustration you feel, the doubt that emerges, the temptation to fall back into old habits, these aren't signs of failure. They're signs of proximity. They are the shadows cast by the light of your new timeline appearing on the horizon. If this resonates with you, anchor it right now. Take a moment and comment below with this phrase: "I am ready to pass through the threshold." Not because the universe demands it, but because you're declaring it to yourself. That declaration is your signal to the field that the old story no longer governs you. It is the conscious alignment that collapses the past and establishes the future. Stay with me because next, we'll explore what happens immediately after this threshold crossing. The energetic recalibration, the resetting of your nervous system, and the unmistakable clarity that you've already completed the leap. When the final echoes of your old identity have surfaced and you've chosen to respond differently, something remarkable happens. Your entire nervous system resets. It's as if your body releases tension you weren't even aware you were carrying. This reset isn't merely emotional relief. It's a physiological confirmation that your quantum shift has begun to stabilize. You transition from chaos to coherence, from survival to creation. If you've ever experienced that strange, profound calm after intense turbulence, you know exactly what I'm describing. In neuroscience, this moment correlates with the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for rest, regeneration, and integration. For most people, daily existence is dominated by the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response where stress hormones keep the body in constant alertness. But when you stop reacting to old patterns and embody your new frequency instead, your physiology shifts into parasympathetic dominance. Heart rate normalizes, breathing deepens, immune function enhances. Dr. Joe Dispenza describes this shift as moving from survival into creation. It's the state where the body no longer signals danger, but alignment. Quantum physics provides another perspective. Before a system stabilizes in a new state, it passes through turbulence. In nonlinear dynamics, this is known as a bifurcation point, the moment where one trajectory dissolves and another emerges. Your nervous system is the interface that translates that turbulence into physical sensation. When you maintain coherence, the turbulence resolves and your body recognizes the new trajectory as its baseline. That's why the calm that follows feels so profound. It's the sensation of your biology synchronizing with your chosen timeline. Spiritually, traditions have always recognized this moment of inner peace after challenge. In Zen Buddhism, it's described as satori, a sudden glimpse of awakening where everything feels lighter, more connected. In Christian mysticism, it's the peace that transcends understanding. Though the language differs, the essence remains identical. After surrendering your old identity, you experience not just mental relief, but an embodied confirmation that you are renewed. Here's how it manifests in everyday experience. The argument that once would have kept you spiraling in reactivity suddenly feels irrelevant. The financial pressure that used to trigger panic now feels manageable, even neutral. The compulsion to control, chase, or obsess quiets down, replaced by gentle trust. It's not that external circumstances instantly transform, it's that your nervous system no longer interprets them as threats. And when you stop broadcasting fear, the field responds with new opportunities, synchronicities, and solutions that match your elevated state. This reset profoundly impacts your biology. Research on heart-brain coherence conducted by the HeartMath Institute demonstrates that when your heart rhythms become smooth and coherent, your brain waves naturally follow. The result is enhanced cognitive function, emotional stability, and heightened intuition. Essentially, your body becomes a finely calibrated receiver for the quantum field. You perceive more possibilities, attract aligned opportunities faster, and experience time differently, less as linear pressure, more as flowing presence. There's a paradox worth noting here. The calm after the storm may initially feel almost too quiet. Many mistake it for emptiness or stagnation. But that stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the presence of alignment. Consider an arrow drawn back in a bow. In the moment of stillness before release, all potential energy is already present. The calm isn't the end of your transformation. It's the confirmation that the arrow is about to fly. When you honor this calm rather than resist it, you'll discover it accelerates manifestation. This explains why practices like meditation, breathwork, and gratitude rituals prove so effective. They train your nervous system to maintain coherence consistently. But here's the deeper truth. Once you've moved through the so-called final challenge, the calm isn't just a practice. It becomes your natural state. Your body remembers it. Your field amplifies it. And the reality you experience conforms to it. So if right now you feel strangely peaceful, even after recent turbulence, don't underestimate this state. That calm is your nervous system's way of confirming the shift is real. The transformation has already occurred. You've moved from reacting to creating, from surviving to embodying. And this isn't fragile or temporary. It's the foundation for everything that follows. Stay connected, because next we'll explore how to fully stabilize this state, how to carry this calm forward so your new timeline doesn't just flicker into existence but locks in as your lived reality. By now you've recognized the pattern. The subtle signals, the turbulence, the threshold crossing, and then the deep calm. These aren't random events. They form the universal sequence of transformation. But here's what most miss. A quantum shift isn't just about experiencing a breakthrough moment. It's about stabilizing that new state until it becomes your lived reality. Without stabilization, the shift can fluctuate, leaving you inspired one day and doubtful the next. True mastery means carrying the frequency of your new self until it crystallizes in your environment. In neuroscience, stabilization comes down to neuroplasticity, your brain's capacity to rewire itself. Each time you embody your new frequency, you're establishing new neural pathways. But if you revert to old emotional habits, the brain defaults to familiar wiring. This is why consistency matters. Not effort, not struggle, but repetition of coherence. Dr. Joe Dispenza often explains, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. The more frequently you inhabit your new state, the more automatic it becomes. Eventually, the old self feels like a distant memory, and the new self feels like home. Quantum mechanics mirrors this principle. When a wave function collapses into a particle, it becomes stable, observable reality. But until that collapse is reinforced, the system remains in flux, oscillating between probabilities. Your consciousness plays the identical role. The more consistently you broadcast the frequency of your desired reality, the more solidly it materializes. Think of it like tuning a radio receiver. Initially, you might catch fragments of signal mixed with static, but once you lock into the precise frequency, the broadcast becomes crystal clear and remains stable. Spiritually, this is what mystics and sages have always taught. Whether it's the yogic principle of abhyasa, consistent practice, the Christian teaching of walking by faith, or the Taoist wisdom of wu-wei, effortless alignment, the message remains consistent. Stability emerges from persistence in the new way of being. Not perfection, not control, just returning again and again to your chosen state until it becomes effortless. Here's the practical key that transforms everything. Stabilization doesn't mean doing more. It means being more. More consistent in your inner alignment, more faithful in your energy, more relaxed in your trust. The external world may require time to fully reconfigure, but your inner world must remain unwavering. That's why gratitude practices, meditations, and daily moments of coherence are so powerful. They keep your nervous system anchored in the frequency of creation rather than survival. Now imagine what happens when you not only make a quantum jump, but live from it consistently. Your nervous system adapts. Your brain rewires. Your field amplifies. And the universe responds not just with synchronicities, but with a complete reorganization of your reality. This is where miracles cease being exceptions and become your normal experience. You don't just shift once. You learn to live in a state of perpetual transformation, where growth, expansion, and manifestation flow continuously. This is why understanding the quantum nature of consciousness is so vital. We are not static beings trapped in fixed circumstances. We are dynamic fields of possibility, constantly collapsing waves into particles, potentials into experiences. Your consciousness isn't just observing reality. It's creating it through the frequency you maintain moment by moment. But here's what many miss. The universe responds not to what you want, but to what you are. Your state of being, your consistent vibration, is what determines which timeline materializes. This is why quantum manifestation isn't about forcing change through action, but allowing change through alignment. You don't make the quantum leap happen. You become the frequency that makes it inevitable. And what about when challenges arise in your new timeline? Because they will. The difference is that from your new state of coherence, challenges become opportunities rather than obstacles. You respond rather than react. You create rather than survive. This is the true power of stabilized consciousness. Not the absence of challenges, but a transformed relationship with them. So, let this be your deepest understanding today. The signs you're experiencing aren't random. The turbulence, the calm, the threshold, the shift, these are confirmations that your quantum jump is real. And now the work is simply to live from it. To choose again and again to be who you've already become. Remember, you aren't waiting for some future to arrive. You're collapsing the future into the present moment. And as you do, the universe has no choice but to meet you there. If this content is touching something profound in you, then I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this field of possibility we're creating together. Join this community of conscious creators who understand that reality isn't fixed. It's responsive to the frequency we embody. Stay aligned, stay coherent, and never forget. You aren't just manifesting circumstances. You're remembering who you truly are. A quantum creator, collapsing waves of infinite potential into the reality you choose to experience. Take a moment now and drop one word in the comments that captures the energy you're choosing to embody. This isn't just engagement. It's your energetic signature to the quantum field. Subscribe not just to stay connected, but to stay coherent with this frequency we're building together. The more of us who embody these principles of quantum consciousness, the more our collective reality will reflect that truth. We'll continue this journey in the next exploration. Until then, maintain your frequency elevated, your heart open, and your nervous system calibrated to coherence. The shift isn't coming, it's already here. You are already living it.